Imagine spending nearly 20 years in the military, serving multiple trips to Iraq to defend our freedom, only to have all of that ripped away because of wrongful rape conviction. I'm Miranda Khan, along with my co-host Alan Mendick, and welcome to another edition of Real Convo. And Alan, our guest today, has a story that literally sounds like something straight out of a movie.
I'm speechless. I mean, I was reading through it. I have all this here.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the documents is incredible. And you know what? Our military, we talk about them a lot, our veterans, they go to war. What are they fighting for? They're fighting for our freedom. They're fighting for their right, for their day in court, so we could have a proper day in court. And
Right.
It didn't happen in this situation.
No, it definitely didn't happen in this situation. I mean, this story, I'm just telling you, it's incredible. Joining us now is Vindicated Navy SEAL Keith Barry. I'm like Alan. I am reading through the events of your life. This is going to be made into a movie. I'm just going to tell you that right now. Someone's going to pick this up, but and we're smiling about it. But what happened to you is so tragic, and so I want to get to that. But first, talk about what inspired you to join the military. I know you were a medic, right?
I was a Navy corpsman initially. Joining the military. I grew up in a family of service. My father was a police officer. My grandfather was in the Korean War. And at a very young age, I learned what SEALs were. At the time, it was actually underwater demolition teams. And then later on, learned what SEALs were. And maybe by the age of 10, I decided that's what I wanted to do.
Wow, 10 years old, you knew it already.
I was very fortunate.
I wanted to be a baseball player at that time.
I can't remember. There were so many different things I wanted to be at that time, but you knew it. You knew it. You were passionate.
I was passionate. I enjoyed it, helping other people. I was an EMT as a teenager, a volunteer firefighter,
Wow, you really
lifeguard. So I enjoyed that aspect.
Saving lives.
Being the person that people come to when bad things happen, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So when did you actually go in? What year did you go into the service?
I joined in 1994.
94, and that was in the Marines, you said?
I joined in 1994. I joined the United States Navy as a corpsman, as a medic, and at the time, SEAL training was closed for medics. They weren't accepting any corpsmen, unbeknownst to me. So now I've gone through boot camp, and I can't go fulfill the wish that I joined for. So I asked the chief that had given me a screening process for SEAL training, and I asked him what to do. He said, if I were you, I'd go serve with the Marines for a couple years first and then do it again. So that's exactly what I did, and I'm very grateful I did.
Yeah, why not? Lifeguard, firefighter, Navy SEAL, Marines. You say it like it's just so easy, and for some of us, it's like unimaginable.
Yeah.
So,
I can't even imagine. I can't. But so you went in. How long were you? You said for 3 years you were a corpsman with the Marines.
Correct.
And then you started. How do you get into the SEALs?
Screening process initially takes just a physical screening process, and then later on there's written exams, and you have to submit a package with your commanding officer's approval, and that just gives you a potential slot or a seat to go through training. And then when you're going through training, everybody's familiar with the numbers that go through 80% attrition rate, where I had a class of 226, I think we started with, and 21 of us graduated.
Wow.
wow, because it's so rigorous. I mean, this is like not to put anybody else down, but right, this is the elite, right? That's what I always hear, because it's intense, like you just said.
It's a good time, yeah.
It's a good time.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, right.
It's a good time.
Yeah, for whom?
What was it like?
part of it's luck.
Some of the training, though. I gotta know, because Alan's gonna try to
Well,
do
no,
it. You
actually-
got this man to do push-ups.
On my knuckles. On my knuckles.
On his knuckles.
But no, so this not only is it physically, but mentally. I mean,
More so.
It's more so mentally than. So you got to prepare more mentally than you do physically.
It's a test of your will. That's all it is. It's basic training, basic underwater demolition SEAL training. So it's a basic course just to test your will to see if you want to be there. If you're willing to forego your own pain or your own comfort and if you're willing to sacrifice for something better of others.
And I bring up mentally for a reason, because
Yeah.
what you went through, which we're going to be getting into,
Right.
the mental fortitude that you had to have had to be tremendous. And just to get through what you're going, I mean, physical is one thing. Physical, you go to sleep and you get up and you recover and everything else. But it's just incredible. So you go into the SEALs. You went into combat or?
Several times.
You did like
Iraq.
what, 8 tours in Iraq?
I've done
I read
8
somewhere?
deployments. Majority of those were in Iraq.
And what
8
did you
tours.
serve over there as a SEAL?
Everything from medic to breacher. Breacher, people aren't familiar with that, is the part of the assault team to gain entry to the target building.
So you're basically the first ones in?
We usually, for a period of years there, our tactics, techniques, and procedures were explosive entry on primary and secondary targets. So we would blow open the doors, blow open the windows, the ceilings, whatever necessary to gain entry. And then in addition to medic and breacher, sniper as well. And then eventually moved on to being an assault team leader.
Yeah, and
Of course, I mean, he's like, and I did this, and I did this, and I did that. And we're just.
it's a lifeguard to him. It's all a lifeguard.
I know, but still, 8 tours. I mean, we hear it now, and it's commonplace now to hear 6, 7, 8 tours. But
Yeah.
back in the day, you did 1 or 2 tours. I mean, this is intense. Did you expect that? Did that ever come across your mind, or did you not even think about it? You probably didn't even.
Time goes very quickly when you get on that train. It's moving 120 miles an hour. 9/11 happened, and after that, once you're on, you're not getting off. A lot of things happened, and before you know it, back-to-back tours. Many people don't realize, and there's no reason they would, but military wives certainly realize that we were gone for over 300 days a year. For multiple of those years. It's not necessarily in combat, but that means we weren't home. We were gone training or we were deployed, but 300 days a year for multiple years consecutively.
Right, it felt weird actually coming home.
Very much.
Yeah, and the other thing is, I would, in speaking with Dr. Bestit from the 22 Project, which is the organization that uses hyperbaric chambers, which is what you're going through right now. She was actually saying those blasts to entry actually do a lot of damage on your brain.
Oh, quite, yeah.
And the way she explained it, which I never even thought of, was your brain's basically floating inside your skull, and every time there's a blast, it's going back and forth,
Right.
which is causing basically like kind of concussions, the way it was explained.
Right, and you
So-
had.
Oh, it's absolutely concussions. And so through the course of years, of course, we didn't recognize it at the time. But once people start having symptoms, and of course, once people start committing suicide as a result of those symptoms, we need to take a harder look at that and realize that over the course of multiple deployments, it's occupational hazard. Not just myself, but the majority of the guys that I've worked with and other service members suffer from post-concussive blast syndromes. So have concussions as a result of IED blast, breacher blast, rocket, grenades, any type of.
And you're doing that many tours. I mean, that's intense. When did you start to realize that things weren't quite right?
Oh, I'd say about 2007. Yeah, earlier on.
What did you start getting headaches? What were the symptoms?
Lack of situational awareness, lack of focus. Now, when I say lack of, not to a typical person, but when you're working at such a high pace, and you're constantly
well, the kind of job that
risk
you
assessments.
had, if you want to call it a job, I mean, I mean, your life is on the line every minute of the day, and other people's lives on the line. Your focus has to be beyond anybody else's. It's not like I do insurance for a living. It's not like me trying to figure out an insurance policy. Focus.
Right. It just slows.
Although he's very good at it.
Yeah. I am really focused. But
focusing, not so much. Insurance policies, okay.
Yeah, but you had an impeccable record too.
Yeah, I mean, stellar.
You got promoted, you went up through the ranks. I have here in, I guess it was 2012, that's when you were promoted to, so you're a Senior Chief Special Warfare Operator?
Correct.
And that's what you retired at?
That's right.
Okay. Yeah. So, and that was in 2012, so obviously to get that, you had to have an impeccable record. I mean, I was reading it.
He
Not
doesn't
every.
want to say it. See, he's so humble. I can see it in your face. I can see it. I get it. I get it. But he's right. But he's right. You had an impeccable record, And you were very dedicated. Very dedicated. But things started to change a little bit, and we're going to go into that coming up after the break. But here, you know, you seem like such a humble, selfless person. All you want to do is help people, right? I mean, from everything from being a lifeguard, Navy SEAL, Marine, it was just like ingrained in you.
10 years old.
10 years old, you knew it. This is like a real life Superman. And then things took a sudden turn. You were wrongfully accused of rape, and that moment changed your life dramatically. And when I say dramatically, there are people, and thank you for coming on to share this story with us. And you're just not going to believe it. You just trust me when I say you have to hear it to believe it. I'm sitting here with this man. Alan and I are sitting here with this man. We have read numerous articles about it, and I still am just sitting here with like my jaw ready to drop.
Yeah.
So coming up, we're going to talk about your wrongful conviction for rape and what it exposed about the military's justice system, if you will, back during that time. And this took place again in 2014 when it was all kind of coming down and everything. We're going to get into that coming up. You are watching Real Convo here with Alan Mendick and Miranda Kahn. Stick around. We're going to talk to Vindicated Navy SEAL again, Keith Barry, his incredible story. Just all I can say, you got to hear it to believe it. We'll be right back. And welcome back to Real Combo. Miranda Kahn here, again with my co-host Alan Mendick. And so what you heard is pretty incredible, but what you're about to hear now is just mind-blowing. I mean, it really is.
Yeah, it's just an incredible story. It's something that it's like fiction. I mean, it's
going to be made into a movie.
It will, but it's something that, you know, you would have to see, this is a true story to really believe that it's a true story.
True.
You know, again, we were talking before, when we opened up, you know, our military fights for this country so we could have the right to have a fair trial.
Right.
What we're talking about now is furthest from having a fair trial. And this is a man that fought for our country so we could do this.
I like it how we're saying that, and he's
sitting
right
there.
Here. And he's so humble that you can't even respond to that. But joining us once again is veteran Keith Barry. We were talking about your dedication and commitment to wanting to help others starting as early as the age of 10, and some of the physical things that you've endured, which I know Alan's certainly going to try. After this, he always likes to do that. No, but in all seriousness, you did eight trips to Iraq while serving our country. You obviously want to defend our freedom, but our country basically let you down. So tell us what happened, because I know what happened, but I just want to hear it from you because it's just incredible.
Well, we'll start off. Where were you Where were you when you were in the States at the time?
I was in the States, and I had come to the West Coast to finish out my career. I'd been diagnosed with traumatic brain injury as a result of
the blast
concussions caused by explosives overseas, like many of us do. So my operational career I knew was over, and I just needed to
start finding a new path.
Go to the next chapter, and exactly. So I thought that training the next generation would be a good way to exit and close that book. But
so was there a base out in San Diego? It was San Diego you were at, right?
Correct. Coronado is where the SEAL training is, basic underwater demolition SEAL training. Notorious Buds there. And yeah, I went there to be the senior enlisted for the training department. And
you got a call, you got a phone call to come to JAG, I guess it was, the Judge Advocate General?
Well, prior to that, I met a woman as soon as I got there, and we started dating very quickly. We started dating, and broke it off after about 5 weeks. And we'd been physical that entire time. And then about a week after we broke it off, I got a call from Judge Advocate General. to go in.
And what did he say? Did he say anything on the phone, or did he just ask you to meet him?
I'm sorry, actually, it wasn't Judge Advocate, it was NCIS. So
Okay.
NCIS is Naval Criminal Investigation Service. So I just was told to go report to their office over in San Diego, which wasn't unheard of. I thought I was going to have to comment on a shooter statement or something that happened overseas. One of my guys, every time something happens, we still, you know,
So they just
it's not
called
like the
you and said,
movies
come
where
on
you just-
over, and
yeah.
that was it. No questions, nothing. Just get
Nope.
down here this
And you
time.
didn't think much of it. Like
No,
you said, it
I just
seemed
thought I was
fairly
going to-
routine. So you go over there and you find out it's the furthest thing from
For the
that.
swim routine, they started small talk and wanted to establish a rapport with me. And finally, I said, what is this all about? And they asked, are you familiar with so-and-so? And I said, yes, I am. And they said,
And did you know?
as soon as they said her name, I knew what had happened. And they said, would you like to tell us about it? Would you like to talk to us about it? Now, they already said, she's accused you of rape. So as soon as I heard that word, the next thing out of my mouth was, I'll speak to an attorney. This is the height of the Me Too movement. This is
So this was in March of 2013.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's got your whole calendar.
yeah, I
there.
got-
I'm just impressed with all the dates there. I mean, he has got it down. But in all seriousness, when you hear that, and you've been through some profound things that none of us can even imagine, but when you heard those words, what? I mean, did you freeze? Did you? Were you in shock? Like, what was?
It felt like a blast would have gone off. It felt like I got caught in another IED. I was speechless. It took time to process, and I'm sure the people, the special agents who were questioning me could tell that.
Yeah.
And they offered to take a statement, but I refused to answer any questions.
You requested an attorney
And
at
I
that
requested
point.
an attorney.
And you did
And
that
they read me my
because, and they read you your rights, and you did that because you just, you know, we see that on shows, but you were just doing it
I mean, training actually just kicked in. Yeah, don't say a word because there's nothing, and come to find out that served me well because they are not in the business. NCIS is Naval Criminal Investigation Service. They're not in the business of investigating anything.
Okay.
They're in the business of making sure that the Navy comes out ahead. So, and if you need to get thrown under the bus, then so be it, as long as the benefits the Navy as a whole.
Right. So you requested an attorney. They read your rights. Do they take you into custody at that point, or what happens at that point?
No, they just read me my rights. I signed paperwork stating that I'd been read my rights and that I'd been charged with a crime, and I was released.
Now
and you contacted an attorney,
Pending
though.
court-martial.
Yeah.
I went to base. I immediately told my senior officials, my senior officers, and told them what had been going on.
Did you get stripped of your rank at that moment, or?
No, my security clearance was pulled. So essentially, for all intents and purposes, my career was over at that point in time. And,
What do you mean it was over at that time? I mean, was it frozen, or
an accusation like that is going to end your career in the military, period. And,
just an accusation? What, true or
and
false?
everybody
or?
knows
So it's basically you're guilty until proven innocent.
you're guilty until proven innocent.
At that point.
It's been weaponized, not only in the military, of course, but now we can see it that's creeped over to the civilian world.
You know, this is something that's really personal, dear to me, as I told you, and I actually told you on the phone. You know, my daughter was raped, and you know, and my daughter died by suicide, and you know, again, when you get into these,
my sister was raped too.
Yeah. And when you get into these accusations, it's not only people that were falsely accused, but the people that were truly raped.
Right.
Now, are they going to be believed? And that's what the problem is here.
100%.
So that's why it's near and dear to my heart with your story. And it was proven that you were vindicated, but let's go through the story. So you, in March, were accused. And how long did it take you to, what was it, in October you didn't go to trial?
October 2014 is when I went to trial,
Okay.
court-martial.
And here's the thing that we still can't believe. How long was that trial?
It was 3 days.
3 days.
That's it.
Yeah, I was, as you mentioned, I was guilty until proven innocent, and I walked in, there was no evidence to support the allegations, none whatsoever. In fact, NCIS, being the investigation service of the Navy, tore my life apart, and in those 18 months found nothing. The government, the prosecutor never called NCIS. I was found guilty. I was convicted without any law enforcement agency ever testifying in court.
No one.
No one.
What about the woman who accused you?
That's all it took.
That's it.
That's all it took.
No, was
Basically
there
one person, that was it.
any physical evidence?
Of course not. No, there
Pictures?
was never a question if we'd had sex, if there had been intercourse.
Right.
We were dating at the time. The accusation was that the last time we were together was not consensual, and that's it. And we had overwhelming evidence, text messages, emails. She had admitted to several things throughout the course of the trial that in any real court of law, the case would have been dismissed.
And she was a civilian, but this was done in a military court.
Correct.
So, I'm still trying to understand why that is.
Me too.
But when you're sitting there, and this is a woman you had, granted, it wasn't a long-term relationship, but long enough, she's accused you, and then you see her in the courtroom, and you see her testifying and accusing you of things that you know you didn't do. And like you said, you already felt like your career was done. What was that like?
It was, absolutely.
Watching someone lie and almost like, you know, not almost, but steal your credibility, your livelihood.
Well, it's absolutely unbelievable. I'm watching this unfold, witnessing it before my very eyes, and I can't process it fast enough. It's happening, but I feel like I'm just watching a movie. The government knew what I'd been doing the last 20 years of my life. I was investigated for a top secret clearance every 5 years. They knew what I was up to. They don't know who this person is. And come to find out after the fact, which I hope we'll get into, but once things started to unravel and the case was overturned, and spoiler alert.
I know, I was going to say, you just spoiled the alert.
But
Yeah.
once you started pulling the thread, I mean, she'd been an actress. She was in this play called Vagina Monologues, and she'd been an actress. So when she got up on that stand and she delivered her testimony, it was remarkable. It was a good. The things that came out of her mouth and the prosecutors, I'm like, this is terrible. This sounds really bad.
You would believe
That's
it.
remarkable,
Yeah.
but what's more remarkable is what happened after that.
Right, and we're going to get to that in just a minute, but we do have to go to a commercial break. And yeah, spoiler alert, but wow, what you've been through. Coming up, we're going to talk about how you tried to appeal it, not once, but twice.
Sure.
That fight and what we discovered about this whole military court system. So please stick around. Again, you're watching Real Convo with Alan Mendick and Miranda Khan, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Real Convo with Al Mendick and Miranda Khan. And I mean, this is where the story just takes a huge
If
turn.
that wasn't bad enough, for 3 days.
Yeah, 3-day trial, no
witness.
evidence. It's military trial. Yeah, and
that's not really the unbelievable part about this.
No.
So let's get into that. You go through the trial, they convict you after 3 days.
Right.
And do you go to appeal right away? Did they?
Well, I wanted to hear one thing though before you go into that.
Okay.
I know you said you thought, you know, I'm guilty no matter what, but after 3 days, when you heard that,
Yeah.
did you anticipate it?
No, not at all. No, not at all. I had questioned my attorneys daily. Is there any feasible way that they could find me guilty? And day after day, they assured me there's no evidence. They have to prove you guilty. You're innocent until proven guilty.
Right.
And there's the problem. I wasn't. My attorneys never proved me innocent. In a real court of law,
It's just reasonable doubt.
beyond reasonable doubt.
Yeah, beyond reasonable doubt, yeah.
But you're innocent until proven guilty, and that's just not the case in the military. Not just in my case, but in the military legal system. That's just not the case. They work differently, very differently,
Yeah.
and justice is not their intent. It's the outcome that's going to better the military in the public's eye.
Which
Wow.
is something that's really interesting, which we're going to get into
And
in
whatever-
Yeah.
a minute. But again, so you're convicted. Did they sentence you right away?
Right away, I was handcuffed and taken to prison.
And what was the sentence?
3 years.
3 years.
3 years, loss of all pays, rights,
Dishonorable
privilege,
discharge.
dishonorable discharge.
But you got out in
And
2.5 years.
I got out for 2.5
for
years.
good behavior.
Well, there's something in there too. So, but let's.
Yeah.
So you go to appeal it.
Correct.
Okay. Now,
Of course.
actually, let's go back to. So you're in prison right away,
Yeah.
and you were telling me that they wanted you to sign something.
In prison.
Yeah.
Yes. I completely understand, and I agree with their basis, just not how they went about business. That anybody convicted of a sex offense while incarcerated there, part of the program is to go through a program that you, much like I'm sure AA,
Yeah.
admit your guilt or make an admission first. And so when I arrived there, they put me in this class and said there's a piece of paper there with an admission of guilt of what I was convicted of. And I wouldn't sign it. They said, you have to, and I said, I don't have to. I have to breathe, I have to eat, and I have to be confined in the walls until released, and sleep whenever possible, but not sign something I'm not guilty of.
So what happened when you wouldn't sign it?
I was put in solitary confinement for 30 days, and I was cut off from the medication I had been on for 2 years for my brain injuries from combat.
So they cut you off cold turkey.
Cold turkey.
Like here you are, you're in your going isolation, no
Yeah.
medication.
Correct. And this is a serotonin norepinephrine release inhibitor. It's Effexor. Many of us, it's a standard medication that people were placed on service members.
Yeah, and Miranda, when I was talking with Keith on the phone about some of this stuff, you were actually telling me that was more hell than you've ever been through. You were a Navy SEAL for what, 18?
Right.
You've been in combat, you've been through everything.
Yeah,
Yeah,
And this
8
was-
tours to Iraq, and this was the worst.
absolutely.
Why was it? I mean, obviously it sounds unbearable to us, but for you personally, again, going to Alan's point, you've been through so much. What was it?
I feel like everything else I could justify as occupational hazard or part of a greater picture, and friends being killed or being any sort of activity in combat or anything I witnessed or participated there. There was always an underlying belief that it was for a greater good. Here, when everything was just cut off and I was in solitary confinement, it was literally hell. I've never experienced and unable to really articulate what it's like.
And that medicine you were talking about,
Right.
that you mentioned, what does that do for you? I know, like, normally when you get off that type of medication, they want you to kind of slowly wean yourself off,
Right.
not just cold turkey, which I just think it's unbelievable.
And there's
I
a
believe
reason
they would
for
do
it.
that.
I mean, you get very anxious when you come off of it. You have
Right.
your head. I mean, there's a lot of reaction that happens when
Well,
you
it's an
come off
antidepressant.
medication.
Yeah.
So, I mean, as if you weren't depressed enough.
To be in solitary
to be in
confinement and be
solitary
wrongfully convicted.
for a crime you didn't commit, and be betrayed by your own government and abandoned by those that you swore to protect.
So now during this time, you're going through the appeal process?
Correct.
Okay, and
Yeah.
what happened? Did you have the same attorneys, different attorneys? How does the appeal process work in the military?
Had to hire different attorneys, and they started working on the appeal process. Unfortunately, what I found out, along with many other things about the military legal system, I won't call it judicious, but the appeals process is mostly a rubber stamp. In my case, the convening authority actually read my case, which I found out was not common. So he read my case not once but twice, I believe, and knew that I was not guilty of what I'd been convicted of, and had huge reservations about it, to the point where he said, I can't let this go. I can't allow this to stand as it is, and he wanted to overturn it.
Yeah.
And then he got, unfortunately, there was pressure put on him, like there has been several other cases, and before and since, there's been pressure put on him by certain members of government to just let it go and make sure that the convictions stand.
Well, why would you do that, though? I'm sitting there, why would people who have been through what you've been through, they're in the military, we've all heard that expression, leave no man behind,
Yeah.
and they're saying, yeah, just let it go.
Yeah, that's a good point.
For political profit and power, it's the same thing as anything else. There's nothing new under the sun. There's members of Congress, and if you want that next star, and if you want a promotion to that next star and retire with that huge pension and get that consulting fee on the Beltway, then you have to do what mommy and daddy tell you to. It's Congress that appoints any flag officer,
Right.
generals, admirals. If you don't abide what they want you to do, if you don't play ball, then you don't get promoted.
Yeah,
But eventually you did get your medicine. I want to make sure we make that point. You did get your medicine. You're in the appeal process. You did,
I did.
as Alan mentioned.
Some wonderful doctors and lawyers found out what had happened. They wrote the commanding officer and informed them what they were doing was highly illegal, and that they were going to rectify it immediately,
Yeah.
which they did.
So now you're in jail.
After maybe 3 to 5 days. I'm not quite sure how long it was.
So you're in jail. This person that convenes over the appeal looks at it. He wants to dismiss it, or at least give you a new trial.
Right.
But he doesn't.
Right.
Because of the pressures that are going on. So now you're going through your trial, prison.
No.
Now you're in
Right.
prison. You actually get out after 2.5 years. You got off for 6 months for good behavior.
Correct.
Right.
Okay, so now you're out. Now what do you do?
Yeah.
Now
Well,
it's really,
he's out and he's dishonorable discharge,
now
right?
I'm dishonorable discharge. I'm a convicted rapist, a registered sex offender. I have no means of supporting myself. Only by the good grace of my friends and family and neighbors was I not homeless. And
When did you actually? So you got out in, what was it? 2000? Was it 2017?
I got out April 1st, 2017.
Okay.
Correct.
Good. He's testing himself.
Yeah.
He's-
Yeah, actually, I
Yeah.
missed that one. So.
Yeah, no.
So now you're out. You're where are you, in San Diego now, or?
I am. I'm staying. A friend, good friends of mine, neighbors, who they were at my. This is a family that I mentored their kids and all the kids in the neighborhood
Yeah.
before being convicted, and all of these people stood by my side through the entire time, and they brought me back to their home, and I stayed in their guest house at this point in time.
Family
And that
and
was the
friends
most
are
difficult
everything.
portion.
We
they
needed
were-
that.
It's amazing.
You know
I wanna
what?
talk
keep on
about-
Going back, I keep on going back to like when he was 10 years old and how he just wanted to save people's lives.
Yeah.
And he was doing all that, and now everything he's going through now.
Right.
And who's there to save him?
Exactly, but we're going to get into that as soon as we go to a break. We have
Okay.
to go to a break. He's just so into your story, and so am I. But I want to talk about your conviction being overturned and advice that you have for people just hearing your story that need it right now. That's coming up. You're watching Real Convo. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Real Convo. Miranda Kahn here again with my co-host Alan Mendick, and we're just hearing the just unbelievable story of Navy SEAL Keith Berry. So we've got to the process now where you have been released after serving 2.5 years in jail for a crime you didn't commit. You're homeless, you dishonorable discharge, you name it, but you have friends and family there, thank God,
Right.
that have your back. Because
Absolutely.
the military, that you served for almost 20 years certainly didn't, not in this case. Yeah.
So now you try and you do your second appeal.
Correct.
Okay, and what happened with that?
Denied. So I got the phone call that the second appeal had been denied, and I was a convicted felon for the rest of my life, a registered sex offender. And I got off the phone and tried to process it, and I believe I went out for a run and just tried to figure out what I was going to do.
What was your family thinking through all this, though? I mean, I can't even imagine.
Yeah,
I mean, clearly they had your back, but you came from this
Yeah.
military background, family,
They were
everybody.
definitely, yeah. It took a lot out of them. That's probably some of the hardest that I've had to deal with. What happened, what it did to my family, what it did to my mother, my sister, and my father.
Yeah. But you're going
so
through, like
there's
Alan
no-
said,
yeah.
you're working on this to get this overturned.
And now you get a phone call.
I got the phone call that said it was done, and then the very next day I got a phone call from my original trial attorney saying, "Have you heard?" And I said, "Yeah, I got the information yesterday." And she
And
said,
that was about the appeal being denied.
correct.
Okay.
But she said, "No, there's new information." This is, I believe, the next day. And there's a whistleblower, a person that she had gone to school with, contacted her with information that he had tried to go up the chain of command, but they ended up washing their hand. They said, "We don't want anything to
What
do
was
with
that information?
because it had to do with the convening authority having a conversation with the Judge Advocate General of the Navy and the JAG, who was a Deputy Judge Advocate General of the Navy at the time, putting pressure on my convening authority to make sure that the conviction stuck."
So these are basically the two highest attorneys in the Navy.
My convening authority was not an attorney. He's a two-star admiral. He was a prior F-14 pilot.
Okay.
But James Crawford, who's the three-star, who was the deputy at the time, he did put pressure. He was the one who was putting pressure not only on my convening authority, but on others. He's an attorney.
Yeah,
He's the top attorney of the Navy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in reading through everything, there was a lot of things that are just fascinating, mind-boggling. I can't even say it.
It just
Mind-boggling.
blows mine. It's so much you
It's-
can't even talk right now.
I can't, but
No, but I
The-
understand. Like, you're sitting there going, okay, you're wrongfully convicted. You're accused for a crime. There's no evidence. Then people know that there was no evidence, and they're still covering it up.
Absolutely.
so one of the things that I read that the JAG, Judge Advocate General, prior to the one that was overseeing, I guess, Crawford,
Correct.
was actually went to the person that was looking over the appeal,
Right.
that denied the appeal, and basically told him that getting a lot of pressure from high up, from
Exactly.
a lot of politicians and everything.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There were
And
members.
but this had to do before your case.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, once the Me Too movement hit and that put pressure on the military, of course we know, unfortunately, as old as men and women, there's been sexual assault in the military, in
Right.
education, in Congress, everywhere in walks of life. And but the military having such a swing of the pendulum to try to compensate for years of men abusing women, they
And then just
decided
automatically assume you're guilty.
you're guilty. You were going to lob heads
Right.
off, and most of it was to appease members of Congress, specifically Senator Kirsten Gillibrand from New York. Her platform was we're cutting down on sexual assault in the military. We're cracking down, and we're going to. What it was modern day McCarthyism. She didn't care about the sexual assault. She just wanted to use that as I said, as her platform to make it look like she was a savior of true victims. And what she did was she just, she created the illusion, and for the sake of for the sake of the illusion of justice,
Yeah.
she created injustice. Because as you spoke earlier, now true victims aren't getting justice, and those who are accused fraudulently of crimes certainly aren't getting justice.
Yeah, and for the sake of time, I want to get into a couple things, because, so you're going through it, you had this brought to the attention, and now the fight starts over again to get the appeal.
Yeah,
So now you're going through it for a third time, and you actually have an affidavit from who is it? The person that first denied the appeal. The one you said there was a gentleman that denied it because of pressure, but he actually wanted to overturn it.
correct, Patrick Lorge.
Okay.
Yeah.
And he's retired at this point in time. So what happened was we got the information that that conversation was had between Lorge and Crawford, something to the effect of, don't put a target on your back, just allow this to happen. And the other conversations of something to the effect of, justice, we're going to boost numbers for Congress, justice be damned. And so Lorge, my convening authority, knowing what was going on, he said he was pacing the hallways at night. He said he just couldn't live with himself. And so we got the information. My appellate attorneys at the time said, had no idea what to do with this information. Finally, they said, just call him. And so they called the retired now admiral, who was my convening authority. They introduced themselves as my appellate attorneys and asked him if there was any validity to the statements. And he said yes. And they were blown away. They didn't know what to do. They said, you realize we're defense for Senior Chief Berry. He goes, I know exactly who you are, and I know what you're asking me, and the answer is yes.
Yeah.
And so they said, would you sign an affidavit to that effect? And he said, send it to me right now, and I'll sign it.
Yeah.
And that started the turnover.
And this is the affidavit you're talking about?
Correct.
Wow. And he actually added a line on here.
Right.
And I'll just read, and the last one he added on here was, on a personal note, I would ask you for you to forgive my failure in leadership and right the wrong that I committed in this case against Senior Chief Berry. Ensure justice prevails, and when doubt exists, allow a man to remain innocent.
Yeah.
And that's something he wrote himself in here.
Correct. The rest of the affidavit was written by the attorneys, so we agreed upon that, and then wrote that additional paragraph at the end.
So what was this experience like for your family? I can't even imagine as you were going through this.
Took many years off their lives, I'm sure. It was debilitating, especially for my sister. Very close with my sister. Of course, my mother and my father as well.
And you have family that's been in the military. They've served just like you. It's got to be very conflicting. Again, you have this love to serve your country, for the military, and yet you see this happen to you or to a family member that you love.
It's quite a blow to see behind the curtain and realize what's actually going on in the military or in the government in general.
So we only have a couple minutes remaining. You've forgiven the woman that's accused you?
I have.
What about the military?
No, those actors, the bad actors in the military and government who facilitated this, this still continues. It happened before me, and it's continued since. The government.
You don't think
hasn't
it's going to
changed
change?
it. That's why I'm here.
Because this happened under a different administration. Do you think it's going to change now?
Not without more people being aware of it. And
that's what you're doing now.
exactly.
You're trying to get out there, get this public.
I get a phone call from a wife or a sister or a family member at least once a week about their husband, brother, father being accused unlawfully, fraudulently, and their lives being destroyed, and asking me what to do about it. So.
Yeah, I'm just, we're just blown away by your story. It's sickening what happened to you.
Yes.
And to be so forgiving and just moving forward and you're still wanting to help people.
Yep.
A lot of people just want to move past this, and that's inspiring.
Yeah, you could just just go away and not even bother with this anymore, but you want to get the word out to help other people.
Yeah.
You're trying to save lives again.
What's the message that, you know, we only have, again, about a minute remaining. We could go on. We're going to make a movie. We only have about a minute remaining, but if you could say something to the viewers who are struggling, who have just heard your story, or maybe somebody who's going through exactly with what you went through, what advice would you give them?
As I said before, I got more out of this than they have ever taken from me. The person who made the accusations and set this forth, they were hurt, and they thought hurting someone else could make that better. And when I was released from prison, I was certainly hurt.
Yeah.
And my initial intent was to stay clear of all women and feel that all women were evil, and that, of course,
Yeah.
that's ridiculous.
That is ridiculous.
That's absolutely
But
absurd.
you've come such a far way. Keith, thank you
So
so
we
much
need
for
to-
your service and for sharing your story. Pleasure to have you.
Yeah,
Thanks.
thanks.
And that will do it for this edition of Real Convo. See you next time.